The Founder of Demonic Cultivation. An English translation by Fun EE33. Read by Luna Minerva. Chapter 14. Elegance, Part 5. Wei Wuxian easily found ways to entertain himself, and he was especially skilled at finding amusement in the middle of hardship. Since there was nothing else to amuse himself with, he could only use Lan Wangji. "Brother Wangji," he said. Lan Wangji was as motionless as high mountains. "Wangji." He behaved as though he couldn't hear. "Lan Wangji," Wei Wuxian said. "Lan Zhan." Lan Wangji's brush finally stilled, and he slowly lifted his head and shot Wei Wuxian a cold glare. The troublemaking boy ducked back and raised his hands in self-defense. "Don't look at me that way. I only called you by your birth name because you wouldn't answer to Lan Wangji. If you're upset, you can call me by my birth name too." "Put down your leg," Lan Wangji said. With his body tilted sideways and his leg in the air, Wei Wuxian's posture was anything but proper. Upon seeing he had finally provoked Lan Wangji into opening his mouth, he felt a burst of hidden delight, as though the clouds had parted and revealed the light of the moon. He did as the boy said and put his leg down, but he also unconsciously leaned closer and pressed his arms against the table, leaving his posture just as indecorous. Solemnly he said, "Lan Zhan, I have a question. Do you really hate me?" Lan Wangji's gaze dropped, and his eyelashes cast fine shadows upon his jade cheeks. Immediately Wei Wuxian said, "Come on, you only said a few words and now you're ignoring me again. I want to own up to my mistakes and apologize. Could you look at me?" After a moment he continued, "So you aren't going to look at me? That's okay, I'll say it anyway. I was wrong that evening. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have snuck out or drunk alcohol or fought with you, but I promise I wasn't trying to provoke you. I really hadn't read your clan's rules. The Jiang clan's rules are just told to us verbally, they aren't written down. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have done it. Definitely wouldn't have drunk that jar of Emperor's Smile in your face. I would have hidden it somewhere and drunk it secretly in my room. Every day I drink and share it with everyone until we're all satisfied." He spoke again. "Also, I mean, let's be reasonable here. Who was the person who started the fight? You. If you hadn't struck first, we could have talked it out and cleared everything up. But if someone hits me, I have to hit them back, you know. You can't blame me for that. Lan Zhan, are you still listening to me? Look at me. Young Master Lan?" He snapped his fingers. "Brother Lan, give me some face. Look at me." Lan Wangji didn't even glance up.
"Copy the book another time."
Immediately Wei Wuxian's body slumped. "Oh, come on, don't be like this. I was wrong, okay?" The other boy exposed his lie mercilessly.
"Your remorse is not the least bit sincere."
I'm sorry, 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 Wei Wuxian said utterly shamelessly. "However many times you want me to say it, I'll say it. I can even kneel if you want." Lan Wangji set aside his brush. Thinking that the boy had finally reached the limit of his patience and was about to hit him, Wei Wuxian prepared a laugh and a sunny smile. But suddenly he discovered his lips were glued shut, preventing him from even cracking open his mouth. The color of his face drastically changed. He said with the greatest effort. Lan Wangji closed his eyes and let out a light breath. When he opened his eyes, his expression was tranquil again, and he lifted his brush as though nothing had happened. Though Wei Wuxian had heard of the Lan clan's horrible silencing spell long ago, he had refused to believe in something so evil. But even after messing with his lips for so long their corners had been scratched red, he could still find no way to pry his mouth open. Thus, he nabbed a piece of paper, let his brush fly across the page, and threw the product at Lan Wangji. The boy glanced at it before crumpling it into a ball and throwing it away.
"Ludicrous."
Wei Wuxian was so peeved that he rolled over his mat, climbed up and wrote another. He slapped it in front of Lan Wangji, who crumpled it into a ball and threw it away again. The silencing spell didn't lift until after Wei Wuxian had finished his copying. The second day, upon re-entering the library pavilion, he discovered that all of the wads of paper littering the floor had been removed. Wei Wuxian had always been the type who forgot the pain of an injury as soon as it healed. Yesterday he had suffered the effects of the silencing spell, yet today he felt his mouth itch intolerably after sitting for about half an hour. Live or die, he started to speak, but before he had gotten out more than a couple of sentences he was silenced again. Since he was unable to open his mouth, he scrawled a few things on a sheet of paper and shoved it at Lan Wangji, who again crumpled the missive up into a ball and threw it on the floor. The third day passed in the same manner. Again and again Wei Wuxian was silenced, up to the very last day of his punishment. On this day, Lan Wangji noticed that Wei Wuxian seemed somewhat different. During his entire stay at Gusu, the troublemaker left his sword everywhere. Lan Wangji had never seen him wear it properly, but today he had indeed brought it with him, slamming it on the side of the table. Furthermore, he didn't stubbornly try to harass Lan Wangji hundreds of different ways, and picked up his brush as soon as he sat down without uttering a single word. He was so obedient that it was bizarre. Though Lan Wangji was given no reason to silence him, he did glance at him a couple of times, as though unable to believe the boy from Yunmeng had suddenly become so well behaved. But sure enough, Wei Wuxian grew tired and miserable after not too long, and started to lapse back into his old bad habits. He sent a piece of paper over to Lan Wangji and pestered him to take a look. Lan Wangji thought it would contain yet more random, pointless nonsense, but some god or demon must have induced him to glance over it anyway. Surprisingly, it was actually a remarkably true-to-life portrait, portraying a figure sitting upright and still, reading quietly under the light streaming through the window. The figure was, in fact, Lan Wangji himself. The corners of Wei Wuxian's lips quirked up as soon as he saw that the boy hadn't immediately averted his gaze. He wiggled his eyebrows at Lan Wangji and winked. Even unspoken, the meaning was clear. Was it good? Did it look like him?
Instead of employing your free time to copy, you choose to draw random pictures. I suppose your punishment will never end.
Lan Wangji intoned slowly. Wei Wuxian blew on still wet brush strokes and spoke with a flippant attitude. I'm already done copying, so I won't be coming back tomorrow. Lan Wangji's long, slender fingers seemed to slow before flicking to the next page of the slightly yellowed volume before him, but he didn't silence Wei Wuxian. When the latter saw that he had failed to provoke the Lan boy, he took the picture and lightly threw it at him. Take it! The picture fluttered onto a bamboo mat, but Lan Wangji had no intention of picking it up. Over the course of these days, Wei Wuxian had scrawled apologies, words of anger or hatred, and pleas of mercy freely, and the missives had all been treated the exact same way. He was used to it and paid it no mind. Suddenly he said, I forgot. I need to add something. He picked up his brush, made a few more strokes, glanced at the picture and then glanced back at the real person and fell to the ground laughing. Setting aside his book, Lan Wangji scanned the image and discovered that Wei Wuxian had added a flower to the hair by his temple. The corner of his lip seemed to pull back. Wei Wuxian climbed up and hastily preempted him. Ludicrous, right? I just know you're going to say it's ludicrous. How about you use a different word? Or add a syllable or two?
Extremely ludicrous.
Wei Wuxian clapped. You added a few syllables after all. Thanks. The boy withdrew his gaze, picked up the book he had set on the table and reopened it. But he barely glanced at it before hurling it away, as though burned by a tongue of flame that had sprung out of the pages. Originally he had been reading Buddhist scripture, but the image that had flitted before his eyes a few moments ago was of two naked figures intertwined. It was an intolerable sight. Someone had swapped the book he was reading for a book of erotic pictures in disguise. It didn't take any brains to figure out who it was. Wei Wuxian must have taken advantage of his distraction and struck when he had been looking at the portrait. What's more, that idiot had no intention of hiding it, and in fact slapped his hand against the table, laughing maniacally. As though fleeing a nest of scorpions, Lan Wangji retreated immediately to the corner of the room.
Wei Ying!
He hissed furiously. As Wei Wuxian had practically rolled under the table laughing, he struggled to raise his hand. Here, I'm here. Swiftly, Lan Wangji drew Bi-Chen. Since the time they had first met, Wei Wuxian had never seen him lose his composure quite so badly. Hurriedly, he grabbed his own sword and drew a third of the blade out of the scabbard. Manners, Second Master Lan, mind your manners, he reminded the boy. I also brought my sword today. We can fight, but don't you want your clan's library to stay intact? He had predicted the embarrassment would send Lan Wangji flying into a rage, and had brought his own sword specifically to prevent the boy from inadvertently stabbing him to death. The tip of Lan Wangji's sword was pointed at him, and his pale eyes seemed prepared to shoot fire.
What kind of person are you?
What kind of person could I be? I'm a guy, Wei Wuxian said. Lan Wangji's tone was cutting.
You have no shame.
I have to be ashamed? Don't tell me you've never looked at these things. I don't believe it. If Lan Wangji had any deficiencies, the fact that he had no idea how to hurl invective was one of them. After pausing a while to suppress his anger, he raised his sword and pointed it at Wei Wuxian again, his expression bitter as frost.
Leave. We have already fought.
Wei Wuxian shook his head, pretending to be cute. No fighting. Don't you know, Second Master Lan? The Cloud Recesses forbids personal fights. He was about to pick up the book Lan Wangji had flung away, but the latter snatched it from him, clutching it tightly in his hands. The cogs in his head turning, Wei Wuxian surmised the boy was planning to report him, with the book as evidence. Why are you trying to fight me for this? I thought you weren't going to look at it, so you are going to look at it now, he said deliberately. If you want to look at it, you don't have to fight me for it. I brought it specifically to lend it to you. Once you've seen my porn, you're my friend and we can keep hanging out together. There's more. Lan Wangji's face had turned white, and he spoke every word like a sentence.
I will not look at it.
Wei Wuxian continued, distorting reality. If you weren't going to look at it, why did you snatch it from me? To hide it so you could keep it for yourself? You can't do that. I borrowed it from someone else. Once you're done with it, I've got to return it. Hey, don't come over here. I get nervous when you get too close. If you have something to say, just spit it out. You weren't going to hand it in, were you? Who were you going to give it to? Your uncle? Second Master Lan, is this really something you can turn over to your family elders? They're going to think you looked through it yourself before presenting it to them. Considering how thin your skin is, I'm afraid you might die of shame. Lan Wangji's spiritual energy poured into his right hand, and the book was shredded into 1,000,000 tiny pieces, which fluttered around before drifting down from the air. Wei Wuxian's concern that his crime would be discovered eased once he saw that he had successfully provoked the boy into destroying the corpse and burying the evidence. He feigned a great sorrow. What a waste! He nipped a scrap of paper that had landed on his hair and raised it to Lan Wangji's face, which was still pale with anger. Lan-chan, everything about you is great, except your love for throwing things everywhere. Tell me, how many wads of paper have you tossed to the ground these past few days? Today, even throwing those wads of paper isn't enough to satisfy you. You have to shred things too. Well, since you made this mess, you should clean it up. I'm definitely not going to take care of it. Of course, he would never had taken care of the messes in the first place. Lan Wangji had endured so much, but at last he could endure it no longer.
Get the hell out!
He roared. Oh, I see now, Lan Zhan, Wei Wuxian said. Everyone praises your noble character and acts like you're the brightest pearl of our illustrious world. No one could be more courteous and more proper. But I guess it was only talk. Don't you know the cloud recesses prohibits making a racket? And you even told me to get the hell out. Is it your first time using this kind of language? Lan Wangji drew his sword and jabbed at him. Hastily, Wei Wuxian leaped onto the windowsill. All right, if you want me to get the hell out, I'll get the hell out. I'm the best at getting the hell out. You don't have to see me to the door. He jumped out and down from the library pavilion, laughing at top volume like a lunatic, plowing down everything in his path. As he leapt into the forest, he found there were already people waiting. So, how was it? Did he look at it? What expression did he make? ㅤㅤㅤ said. His expression? Wei Wuxian said. His shouting was deafening just a little while ago. Didn't you guys hear it? We did hear it. ㅤㅤㅤ's face was filled with reverence. He told you to get the hell out. This is the first time I've ever heard him talk like that. How did you do it? Wei Wuxian's expression was as gleeful as the spring breeze. We should celebrate. Today, I helped him break a rule for the first time. You saw, right? Before me, second Master Lan's renowned learning and self-possession collapses in a single blow. A dark expression shadowed Jiang Chang's face, and his voice was filled with anger. Why are you so proud of yourself? What is there to be proud of? Is being told to get out some amazing accomplishment? You're making our entire clan lose face. Wei Wuxian said, I tried really hard to apologize to him, but he didn't even pay attention. He silenced me for days and days, so what's wrong with messing with him a bit? I gave him Brother Huaisang's precious porn with good intentions. It's such a pity what happened to it. I didn't even get to finish the book, but it was magnificent. This Lan Zhan is so unromantic and cold. He even got upset when I offered it to him. What a waste of his face. No need for pity, ㅤㅤㅤ said. However much of it you want, I have. Jiang Chang smiled grimly. Now that you have thoroughly offended both Lan Wangji and Lan Qiren, you're basically dead tomorrow. No one's going to clean up your corpse either. Wei Wuxian waved and hooked his arm around Jiang Chang's shoulders. No need to be so concerned. First I tease them, and then whatever happens, happens. You've dealt with my corpse so many times already, so what's once more? Jiang Chang's foot flew at him. Scram, scram! The next time you do these things, don't let me know. And don't invite me to watch.